is going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another episode. I am your host, Sweetcar. Again, riding solo for back-to-back weeks. We have a lot to discuss. 14 weeks are in the books. You know what that means? Week 15 is officially here, and that is the playoffs. That's right, guys. The playoffs are officially here. I don't know where the time has gone. This season flew by completely, and now it's time to start playing for what this entire season meant. The next 3 weeks, 2 weeks, if you have a bye, to lift the ultimate trophy and win that championship. So a lot to discuss. I'll recap all of week 14, all of the highs, the lows, how'd I do with my, start sits, boom busts, hidden gems, and then obviously end it with waiver wires. I know it's going to be slim pickings. You're in the playoffs. You most likely already have a pretty sound and set roster to deploy in the playoffs, but there are a couple of guys here and there that you can pick up for a potential stash. You can pick up to block other teams from picking up these players who could be beneficial in the playoffs. So without further ado, guys, the playoffs are here. Let's real quickly recap some of the crazy performances this week. The biggest winners for players this week. Chances are, if you had some of these guys, you most likely won your matchup. Josh Allen putting up the highest point total by a single player ever in the history of fantasy football, over 52 fantasy points. I'm assuming if you started this man, you automatically won. Zach Charbonnet filling in for Ken Walker, over 35 fantasy points. Incredible day for him. Receivers went crazy. Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison, all north of 30 plus fantasy points. Jordan Addison outperforming his own teammate, Justin Jefferson, who I believe had 29 fantasy points. So big day for them. And if Addison and Jefferson both had 29, 30-point days, that probably means the quarterback Sam Darnold had a fantastic day, 30-plus points, quarterback 2 on the week for Sam Darnold. So a couple of guys, all of those who had 30-plus fantasy points this week. Again, most likely, if you had multiple guys especially, you definitely came out on top in your matchups. Biggest losers, man. You always have the losers this week. Jaden Reed, by far probably the biggest loser this week. An absolute goose egg when some teams needed him the most. 0 fantasy points, just completely unacceptable for somebody who, coming into this week, was wide receiver 8 on the season, which is so hard to fathom and believe. The consistency score for Jaden Reed probably wouldn't be all that high. He had a big 33-point game, and he's had some really lull games as well. So there's highs and lows with Jaden Reed, but to think wide receiver 8 on the fantasy football season gets you an absolute goose egg in a must win, very, very important week 14 matchup that you just can't have that. So he takes the cake as the biggest loser. Some other losers, unfortunately, unfair to some of these guys. Bucky Irving only got 3 fantasy points, 2.3 fantasy points, but he ended up getting hurt, didn't play all that much, but very unfortunate after how good he's been. Rashad White, if you had him and you played him, he had a fantastic day in Bucky's absence. James Cook, another really, really bad day after an amazing day. I mean, that's going to happen when Josh Allen rushes for 3 rushing touchdowns. So James Cook didn't have that great a day, but not really worried about him. AJ Brown's another big one, 6.3 fantasy points, I think. But the bigger story here is all the stuff that came out with him and Jalen Hurts not being on the same page. AJ Brown expressing that the offense needs work in what area specifically. The one word he said was passing. So I think that's a direct shot at your quarterback, who, again, hasn't been all that great. They've been riding Saquon Barkley's coattail, and the defense has been improving, but the passing game still needs work if this team wants to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. A.J. Brown, not the best weeks, but again, you still have to start him heading into playoffs. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a constant loser this year. It just, where you drafted him, how he's been performing, it just has not been there. And another dud week. I really don't know what else to say about him. T. Higgins, you had Jamar Chase and you had Joe Burrow have fantastic days. Even Chase Brown had a fantastic day, but the one guy that was the outlier there that didn't was T. Higgins, only 3-4 fantasy points, so not a great day for him. And then DeAndre Swift, a guy that I have not been high on. He had a couple of good weeks and everybody thought he was back, but no, this guy's less than average and had another really, really bad performance. So another guy that you're probably shying away from in the playoffs because you can't trust him. So those are some of the biggest winners and losers this week, guys. How did I do? Last week, I had a bunch of start sits, boom bust, hidden gem. It was just me riding solo. So I want to real quickly run through how I performed in giving you guys the best potential advice that I could. Quarterbacks, we have Caleb Williams over Will Levis. I said Caleb Williams should be the start, and Caleb Williams, in fact, did outperform Will Levis. I said Jordan Love should be started over Will Levis, who also outperformed him. I said Russell Wilson should start over Kirk Cousins, easily outperformed him. I said Jameis Winston should start over Kirk Cousins, also outperformed him. So quarterbacks really took the cake, 4 for 4. Really was just fading Will Levis and fading Kirk Cousins this week. The running backs, I had Isaac Guerendo and Tyrone Tracy were my 2 starters over Chuba Hubbard and DeAndre Swift. Now, Guerendo and Tracy both had great days. Hubbard also ended up having a great day, but Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL, and then I think Blackshire, the third string running back, also got hurt. So it was all Chuba based on injuries. Swift didn't have a good day, so I'd still say Guerendo, Tracy take the cake over Hubbard and Swift. Receivers, a little bit more questionable. Jalen Waddle ended up outperforming Ridley and DJ Moore. I did like Ridley and Moore over Ridley and Waddle, but Ridley and Waddle take the cake. DJ Moore was the odd man out with the Bears offense not really performing up to par. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas both outperformed Deebo Samuel. That was an easy no-brainer. Deebo's been a ghost in this offense. He looks like a shell of himself, not necessarily effectively running the ball. He's never been a great route runner or separator, so unless he's getting those gadget plays and making, big boom home run plays off of those screens and things like that, he's really not going to be that effective, and that's what we've seen. I said you should start Jaden Reed over Jalen Waddle, which was probably my biggest mistake of the week. Jalen Waddle handedly outperformed Jaden Reed, who had a goose egg. But I did say start Jalen Waddle over Christian Watson. Watson ended up having a better day than Jaden Reed, but Jalen Waddle did end up having a better day than Christian Watson. Jalen Waddle over Christian Watson was a no-brainer. I said Jerry Jeudy over Devontae Smith was a no-brainer, and he ended up outperforming him. And the kicker matchup, I said you have to start Matthew Wright over Cade York, and Matthew Wright ended up, I think, with over 17 fantasy points. So definitely outperformed Cade York there. So really good, positive feedback this week in the start sits. Now, boom bust, kind of a different story. I said Will Dissly was going to be my boom. He was taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been a funnel to passing tight ends or pass catching tight ends. But he did, in fact, get hurt in the second quarter. So that totally takes that out of the question. Chuba Hubbard was my bust. Again, situation. Jonathan Brooks coming into the fold, bad matchup, but Brooks tore his ACL. The third string running back also got hurt. So volume is the name of the game. Chuba got the volume and ended up not busting. My hidden gem kickers and defenses. Will Reichert, coming back from injury for the Minnesota Vikings, was my hidden gem kicker. He made a field goal that the defense had a penalty on, and then the offense got a first down, and then in fact ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So took away 3 points from Will Reichert, and then he had another 40-something yard field goal that hit the upright. So incredibly unlucky day. I said double-digit points was guaranteed. He ends up with 5, but 2 field goals, one if he makes and they don't get the penalty, obviously gets there, and the other one, obviously, if he makes to get there. So the opportunities were there. It just did not execute the way we had hoped. Cardinals defense, man, this was my hidden gem defense, and I will eat this. They pooped their pants. -1 fantasy points. Geno Smith was able to throw all over them with JSN. Zach Charbonnet ran all over the Arizona Cardinals. Their offense couldn't do anything. So that'll be the last time I put some stock in the Arizona Cardinals. Their defense absolutely pooped their pants. That's all I have for how'd I do. Let's end the episode real quick with waiver wire watch list, guys. I'll make this quick. Again, it's week 15. Nobody's on buys. You have all of your best players starting and playing. So really don't overthink a lot of this stuff. But with that being said, here's how I want you to move into this week. You have a lot of guys that you stashed on your bench, right? Hoping maybe the starter got hurt. You get some more playing potential. You were high on this guy. He's been disappointment, but you can't get yourself to cut him. Well, now that the playoffs have started, I don't want you to have anybody on your bench that you have zero intention of starting. If you have a guy that you're just stashing on your bench, hoping that somebody else gets hurt, right now there are probably better options out there to go pick up, like a backup quarterback, like a backup defense. If you're basically thinking into the playoffs, you want to look at your matchups for week 16, week 17, and week 18, right? Defenses, typically, you're not going to start the same defense every week unless you had some of the, the few top 5 defenses in the NFL. Even then, you want to make sure you check the matchups to make sure it's not a disadvantageous matchup. But these are the weeks where you finally do want to stash 2 defenses. If you're looking ahead to 15, you win week 15, and you're looking ahead to week 16, who are the advantageous matchups on defense? That's who you want to be stashing. And kickers, same thing. If you've been somebody that's been streaming kickers weekly based on matchups, this is where you probably it wouldn't be a bad idea to roster 2 kickers, because let's be real. Are you ever going to bench your starting quarterback for a backup quarterback based on matchups unless it's a fringe quarterback starter? Probably not, right? But is there a world where you're going to toy over a kicker and a defense based on matchup, weather, situation, all that? Definitely. And that's going to make a big impact. So those are the kind of people you want to keep on your roster heading into the playoffs. The other aspect is obviously, even if you have a loaded roster that you know you're not going to mix and match, if there is a big waiver wire claim out there to go grab to block your opponents from being able to pick this guy up, then that is also something you should absolutely do. So this is the time to no longer hoard players that you have no intention of playing, or hoard players that you know other players aren't even going to start. Get rid of those guys and pick up players that you think will provide value in the playoffs. With that being said, streamers this week, it's a little bit thin. I can't imagine somebody needing to stream a quarterback going into the playoffs, but matchups, again, Caleb Williams takes on the Minnesota Vikings, a team that he just put up really, really good 26 fantasy points against a couple weeks ago. Came off a dud 14-point performance this past week, but this is a better matchup. Negative game script. They're probably going to be losing to the Vikings. That's really when Caleb makes all of his hay with fantasy points. Drake May taking on the Arizona Cardinals. We just talked about the Arizona Cardinals putting up -1 fantasy points against the Seattle Seahawks. Drake May has been using his legs quite a bit. He's been playing really, really good football. It just doesn't have a lot of supporting cast around him. Because of his rushing upside, he's not the worst start this week. If you needed a desperation throw or a 2-quarterback system, Drake May would be a great QB2. And Matthew Stafford against the San Francisco 49ers. Right now, the 49ers defense isn't all that great. I know they played well against the Bears, but the Bears offense is not that good. But the Staffords and the Rams have been absolutely clicking. Puka, Kupp, Kyren Williams, their offense is humming right now. Divisional matchup, playing for the division, 49ers, Rams. I want a piece of that pie. I think a lot of players are going to eat in that game. So Matt Stafford may not be the worst streaming option this week for the quarterbacks. Running backs. I have Sincere McCormick, Las Vegas Raiders lead running back, looked very good. He's looked a lot better than Madison. He's looked a lot better than Zamir White. He's looked better than Amir Abdullah, and he's getting more playing time. He has a really advantageous rest of the season schedule: Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans. So this isn't a guy that you're just stashing. This is a guy that potentially you're flexing, potentially starting in an RB2 if you're desperate. Wouldn't be the worst start. He's looked good. He's going to get the bulk of the carries. They have Aiden O'Connell now, or they don't have Aiden O'Connell now. They have Desmond Ridder now, and it's taken away more of the passing game. So I imagine there will be more run emphasis, and Sincere McCormick will be the benefactor of that. You have the running backs for the San Francisco 49ers. Really, really questionable. Grendo also got hurt. Patrick Taylor's next on the depth chart. They have Keyshawn Vaughn, and they play on Thursday night. So this is definitely something to monitor tomorrow heading into Thursday. Patrick Taylor probably is next in line, but he's not like a Isaac Grendo rookie running back that has extreme speed that, they have a lot of promise. He's been around the block. So he's just another guy. Granted, Jordan Mason kind of was that and eventually came into his own, and it is an advantageous offense for running backs. But with that being said, I don't know that these players that are left on the depth chart are going to have the same level of success that obviously CMC, Mason, and Garendo have had, but still you want the running back for the 49ers. So right now it seems like it's Patrick Taylor, barring any other news or any other additions, things like that. That is who you will probably want to pick up. You have the Jets running backs, man. I played this game last week. Braylon Allen felt like a must-start, immediate plug-and-play when Breece Hall was injured. Him and Isaiah Davis completely, like 50% snaps split. Isaiah Davis actually looked like the better football player, just more explosive, more elusive, really good pass catcher. Gives me a lot of Austin Eckler vibes. And he ended up getting the touchdown over Braylon Allen. That was the difference. So they're both okay starts probably because they're going to completely split the workload. And Rodgers right now loves to check the football down. So there's a lot of pass catching in their future. But again, I think those guys are going to be behind. Las Vegas is Sincere McCormick right now, just because we don't know who the guy is going to be. And if they're completely splitting it down the middle, you don't want to be on the losing end of the guy that doesn't get the touchdown. Receivers. He's probably widely rostered, but if not, because of injuries, things like that, Adam Thielen he's back. And he's making a name for himself again. He's a PPR machine. He catches so many passes from Bryce Young, and he's always getting open. He's their wide receiver 1 right now again. So he is somebody that you absolutely need to pick up if you haven't. And if he's on your team, you're probably starting him. Quentin Johnston's another guy. He continues to catch touchdown passes and be relevant. Ladd McConkey got hurt. You thought it was going to be Josh Palmer, but ended up being huge, who got a touchdown and made himself relevant again. And then you look at the Packers receiving core. If Romeo Doubs is out, Dontavian Wiggs is not the worst dart throw. Even Christian Watson right now is not the worst dart throw, depending on the matchup. So those are a couple of other guys. But again, this is playoffs. Very rarely are you probably going to be in a position where you're going to have to start one of these players. But if you do, those are some of the guys that I like. That's all I got. Short and sweet. I know playoffs are right around the corner. So prepare, pick up, plan. If you have any other questions, start sits, anything like that, shoot it in our DMs. If you're watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. You're listening. You can find us everywhere you get your podcast platforms. Socials, we're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at The Only Playbook. I'm Sweetcard. That is my Twitter handle. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Good luck in the playoffs, and let's go ahead and smash this thing. See you guys.